Okay. We're going to get started. My name is James Pepper. I'm the chair of the Cannabis Control Board in Vermont. Today is January 29th, 2025. It's 1:01 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. We are in a different room today. There's Cannabis Advocacy Day at the State House, and we're expecting maybe some additional guests today. So we are in the same office building just down the hall. And because it's my understanding they may be, the kind of licensees may be joining a little late, I'd like, there's no objection, to add another public comment period at the end of the meeting to accommodate those folks.
No objection.
Okay. All right. Well, I have a few opening remarks before we turn to the agenda. I did want to note that Ceres will be closing its South Burlington Medical Dispensary as of tomorrow, January 30th. I'd like to take a moment once again to apologize to the patients that will be impacted by this situation. Patients and the dispensaries and the legislature and we at the CCB have been watching the decline of the medical program for, about half a decade without coming up with real solutions for a seamless transition. So as I mentioned in our last meeting, there are a few options available to patients, admittedly, none of which are perfect, but Hello High is a new medical dispensary in Winooski that we approved at our last meeting, and that place now has its doors open. Grassroots in Brandon will continue to deliver to medical patients around the state. Also, many of our adult use retailers offered registered patients a 20% discount on products to help offset some of those costs. And then more broadly, we have drafted our rules for the medical use endorsement and are on track to be able to issue those once we're authorized to do so in July. In the meantime, if any patients listening have questions about access to medical products and services, please email us at ccb.med@vermont.gov. A quick reminder that the board voted in our November meeting to temporarily close the application window for new cultivation licenses effective end of business day on January 31st. And just to be absolutely clear, that decision impacts new cultivation applications, not renewals. So if you have a new application for a cultivation license in process, please work with your licensing agent to submit all required documentation prior to that deadline if you want to be considered for a license. Olga, our executive director, has prepared some slides in her executive director report that will show where the kind of active applicants are situated in the pipeline. At our December meeting, the board, Kyle, you were out, but Julie and I discussed a waiver request to our rule prohibiting single-use disposable vaping devices. The intent behind that regulation was to avoid filling up our one landfill in the state with cheap, non-reusable devices that oftentimes have a non-removable lithium-ion battery embedded in them. After discussing the issue, we decided that this rationale may potentially be better served if the components were easily recyclable or compostable. If we were able to reclaim some of those devices for recycling or composting, and if the battery was easily removable. So we have now implemented a pilot for single-use vapes that meet certain criteria and some data reporting requirements that hopefully will help inform us whether we should make this pilot a permanent part of our rules. If you are a manufacturer or a retailer that's interested in the concept, I encourage you to check out the pilot program information on our website at ccb.vermont.gov/vape device pilot, or talk to your compliance officer. The lab, we have officially signed the lease on space for our quality assurance lab in Colchester, which means we're going to be posting the lab director position soon, which is great step forward. Note about background checks. Conducting background checks on all principals and owners of cannabis licenses is a statutory requirement that was meant to be relatively painless. Unfortunately, the CCB in Vermont and in many other states were denied access to criminal records through the FBI, which it would have been that quick, easy, and kind of inexpensive process for prospective applicants. As a result, we had to pivot to a private company to conduct these checks, which, while we are grateful to them that they were able to fulfill this statutory requirement, has been extremely costly and time intensive for applicants. The board has decided to continue to require background checks, but push out their frequency. So new applicants will need to go through that CSI process, but we will not ask you to update that background check with CSI for 4 years. This hopefully will reduce the burden on all licensees and streamline the renewal process. I would note, though, that regardless of that background check requirement, every owner, principal, manager, and employee has an ongoing duty to update the board on any change to their criminal history or otherwise that might implicate their qualification for licensure. That's all I got for opening comments. We had minutes that we have to approve from our last meeting on December 18th, and then we had 3 work group meetings, one on December 12th, December 17th, and December 18th. Kyle, I know you were out for the last board meeting, but have you guys had a chance to look at the other ones? And,
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there a motion to approve the December 18th regular meeting?
So moved.
And I will second that.
I'm going to abstain from that one since I wasn't present.
Yeah. So all in favor on that one?
Aye.
Aye. And then the 3 work group meetings, is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. So moving down the agenda, next is public comment. And we'll just handle this the same way we always do, except today we actually have someone in the room. I don't know if you'd like to make a comment first.
No pressure.
No pressure?
I think I'm here to listen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So then anyone who would like to make a public comment and join via the video link, please raise your virtual hand if you'd like to make a comment, and we'll call on you in the order that you raise your hand, and then we'll move to anyone who's joined via phone. All right, Sean.
Hey, good morning. I just want to touch on the 2 things that you opened the meeting with in regards to employee ID cards. Seemingly, when folks go through renewal process, you're giving a, hey, give a 2-month head start before your actual expiration date. As people are trying to do that due diligence and, renew as quick as possible, when they're handed the new card, seemingly that overall life cards are shortening when you start that process 2 months out. When you're handed the new card, you only get 10 months on that new card before you kind of have to start over again. And then the next year, presumably that would put you into 8 months. So somehow trying to adjust in the system where start of renewal date is not necessarily reflective of shifting the new expiration date on the employee ID cards. And I'll see if I can maybe iterate that in a better verbal fashion to allow you guys to track down that issue and see if you can collaborate it to other employees experiencing that same thing. And then for single-use vapes, I've heard you guys talk about it from the environmental standpoint, which is absolutely huge, very important for so many regards, but also that single-use vapes, allowing whatever waiver or facilitating this for the licensed market is going to also, I think, help reduce the black market foothold in the vape category specifically, that the amount of single-use disposables floating around on the black market is just egregious right now. And so you guys being able to reduce black market footprint through single-use vapes getting a pass for the moment. And then as we look towards federal rescheduling and everybody has to figure out the larger environmental issue, then yes, we would maybe start to clamp down in those ways once the black market immediate issue has been remediated. If you guys are still going to allow a second public comment session, maybe I'll hold the rest until other folks pile into the room. Thank you so much.
That's great. Thanks, Sean. I am wondering if you'd be willing on the single-use vape to submit a written comment to the board, because really we have to change our rules on that. And it'd be nice. It'd be nice to have that rationale as part of the record for the rulemaking process.
Certainly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else for public comments? And Dave Silverman.
Hi, pardon any background noise here. I'll make it quick. On that vape reclamation program, I wish you guys would talk a little bit with retailers before you make proposals that impact or require our involvement. This program requiring 2 separate $20 deposits, a lot of us retailers look at that and kind of laugh. Nobody's going to want to do that from a consumer perspective. It's going to be, maybe it'll be success. I don't want to prejudge, but I cannot imagine you're going to get a lot of participation in that. And you guys need to be a little more tied in to market realities in your decision making. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Anyone else or a public comment? Anyone that maybe has joined? We did add a second public comment window at the end, so you can hold comments to the end if you'd like. And if you join by a phone and would like to make a comment, you can unmute your phone by hitting *6. All right, I'll close this public comment window. Just as a reminder, we did add one at the end so people can, hear what we have to say today and maybe comment at the end as well. But Kyle, did you want to respond?
Yeah, Dave, those fees have been changed. I would encourage you to look back at what our website currently reflects. Again, this is trying to balance what's going to incentivize a consumer to bring something back in addition to what's going to incentivize a business to potentially move in this direction. So again, I would encourage you to take a fresh look at our website.
All right, moving down the agenda. I wanted to give a quick update on rulemaking in general. So we are in the middle of a rulemaking process. We've posted our proposed amendments and are currently soliciting comments. The next formal step is for us to hold a rules hearing, which is a public meeting. It's scheduled for February 20th. You can participate virtually or in person. And then once that public comment period closes, the board will review each distinct comment and decide whether we need to make changes based upon those comments that we've heard. And then we submit the kind of final package to the legislature, a legislative committee for one final review. And then if they approve it, then we vote to adopt it. I know it's a tall order to people that are running a business and trying to keep up with all the changes to statute and rules and guidance, and not to mention just finding time for yourself. But I can't stress how important it is for everyone to read and provide comment on those rules, not just the parts that we propose to amend, but the parts that we didn't touch that may be causing undue hardship on your business. We've held a number of roundtables and peer networking events, stakeholder meetings. We've issued a couple of surveys to try and understand where the biggest pain points are. But the more perspectives we can get during this process, the better. And I just, there's parts about the rules currently that the board doesn't like. We realize that the market's evolved faster than the rules, but we're all stuck with them, until some future board, us or someone else, decides to reopen them. But now we have this kind of golden opportunity to make the changes that we need. I did want to provide a brief overview of 10 of the more substantive changes and provide some of the rationale behind them. But please keep in mind that there are hundreds of changes in those rules, and any one of them may impact your business. So please just take a look. But first, a major theme throughout the kind of amendments are to streamline the license renewal process. For anyone that's been through it, there's very little difference between what we require in an initial application and a renewal application with respect to kind of required documentation, even if nothing in your business has changed. So the new plan is that each licensee will be required to keep up-to-date records of what we're calling governing documents. These are just your certificate of occupancy, your operations plan, your equipment, your site plan, all the kind of basic things about your business. But that renewal will only require submission of certain documents like, the statutorily required proof of insurance, the statutorily required good standing with the tax department, and payments of fees. We think this will reduce a tremendous amount of redundant paper pushing and the kind of back and forth that comes with that with the CCB at the time of renewal. Second, we're going to simplify ownership and location changes. Previously, if you had kind of non-de minimis changes to ownership or you wanted to move locations, this essentially required an entirely new application with a new expiration date. And now we're going to have kind of a discrete license amendment form that will allow a licensee to update these changes much more easily. Third, we're shifting the criteria for why we may deny an application or employee ID card. The current criteria focuses almost entirely on whether you've committed a violent offense, but ignores other types of behavior that may impact the overall health of the industry. Things like certain types of misconduct or, deviant business practices. Fourth, we've codified the propagation cultivation license regulations, which are in effect currently, but just through guidance. We needed to move them into rule, but the rules weren't open when that license became available. Fifth, we have kind of the first shot at retail siting. It's really largely based upon a municipal population. I think, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think it's for a town with 4,000 or fewer people, no more than 3. For a town with 8,000 or fewer, no more than 4 retail licensees. For a town with 12,000, no more than 5, and then 6 will be the maximum in any municipality. We did leave kind of a little pressure release valve. These caps, we still have this opt-in, opt-out, system. So these caps may be overcome if there's the CCB believes there's a rational basis for an additional shop, or if a local municipality, probably through a vote of its citizens, actually wants another one, or through a select board or something. This is a very challenging policy. No one here asked for this authority, and mostly because no one would expect a statewide government agency to determine, how many restaurants or how many grocery stores should be in a given town. But if you go back to our September meeting, you can hear all the conversation about who gets harmed and who benefits from this kind of limiting retail licenses. I'd just say that this is our first attempt at putting numbers on a page and kind of this approach. But we are very open to kind of conversation about a different approach or changing those numbers.
Yeah, and this, I would encourage folks as they think about retail siting to remember context here. We're a market and a state that's built on tourism. So I don't necessarily believe a strict resident to dispensary or retail shop ratio without broader context really tells the full picture of what a lot of the decision making as we look at supply and demand really lends itself to. We have a huge tourism industry, and again, these slots for new dispensaries, they're still going to take entrepreneurial interest to fill one of those slots. And at this point, a lot of the more quote unquote saturated areas, those slots are filled up. It's going to take not only entrepreneurial interest in a lot of the, more heavily populated areas, but a lot of the smaller towns with cannabis deserts around the state to really fill one of those slots. And so it's going to take the right type of business to be successful in those slots. So again, I just as we think about retail siting, we have tried to contextualize in our thinking how we can do this statewide without broader context to know that certain towns are tourist heavy, certain towns are not tourist heavy. It gets really granular. So if you have any bright ideas around how to do that, we're really interested in hearing those ideas.
Anything you want to add?
No,
Retail
that was good.
siting? Okay. All right, so I've been through 5, 6. We're trying to put some regulation around unlicensed cannabis brands that are operating in the state through production agreements with licensed manufacturers. Without a license, these companies can accrue many of the benefits of participating in the market without theoretically having to comply with all the regulations that other licensed businesses are subject to. So I just want to anticipate a little bit of opposition to this provision. This does not prohibit white labeling. This merely says that the brand that's being presented to the consumer needs to be a licensed entity in addition to the manufacturer that's producing it.
I would also just mention this doesn't necessarily mean the quote unquote cultivator needs to be in your manufacturing facility helping you to turn this flower into something. We just want to see that chain, as you alluded to, that the licensed cultivator is also a licensed manufacturer or another licensee within the supply chain of the licenses that we have available. It's really intending to kind of keep some of the more national brands that are always looking for entryways, cheap and easy entryways into smaller markets at bay, unless they want to have an actual presence here.
7th, we're trying to get ahead of an issue that's been causing some complications, which is unrestricted consignment sales. So limiting consignment sales is more consistent with the statutes, which, right or wrong, really contemplated that cannabis would both legally and physically change hands between licensees throughout the supply chain. We've seen how these arrangements can be exploitative to growers. And we've also seen some disruption to the market when a cannabis establishment closes unexpectedly. But we know how common they are on the flip side. So, we really want to hear how what we've done in this rule might impact the way you're doing business and what it should look like. 8th, we're harmonizing our medical dispensary rules, especially around independent third-party testing and employee training with our adult use program. We were kind of had our hands tied for a few years, but we're finally doing that. We also have the medical use endorsement rules laid out. I would say that the kind of biggest, kind of most costly regulation associated with that is just you need to present actual plans on how if you're an adult use retailer, you're going to protect patient privacy if requested. We don't get too prescriptive as to, how you can do that. Historically we've said, specialty hours for patients or a reservation system. We also have, medical use is allowed to do delivery and curbside pickup and drive through. So, you just have to present a plan, but then you also, you'll see in there that, products that are medical use only need to be, physically segregated from the adult use products so that there's no kind of consumer confusion. There's no mistakes that are made there. And then, any employee that intends to interact with patients on issues like product selection or dosing or modes of administration or drug-to-drug interactions needs to have an enhanced education certification. The board is going to be providing this. We went out to contract and we've are close to selecting a vendor that will be able to do this. So that education, the intent is to have no additional costs other than the kind of time that it takes for the employees to kind of get certified in that. I want to just add that, the medical use endorsement is critically important for patient access, but at the same time, there is extreme anxiety at the legislature and some kind of, medical society and others that this program is going to be abused. So the board has to keep a very close eye as to how it's being rolled out. Ninth, we took our first attempt at another legislative request over production management. In the legislature, we were kind of talking about this as cultivation tier expansion and tier relegation. This would allow cultivators at renewal to apply for a license that was otherwise closed to new applicants if they can hit certain performance benchmarks in the prior kind of 12 months. It also allows a CCB to drop a cultivator down a tier if they are kind of habitually sitting on large amounts of unused growing capacity. And then finally, with more stores needing to accommodate privacy and confidentiality needs of patients, we have rules in there around curbside pickup and drive-through. This may need to be limited to just those standalone medical dispensaries and the adult use retailers that have the medical use endorsement, but we're interested to hear people's feedback on those. And those are the big ones. There's lots of other ones in there, but I figured I'd just get those out. If you want to make a comment, the public comment window at our board meetings is not actually the appropriate way to do that. We need to have kind of a separate record of all comments related to our rules. So you can make written comments to the board at ccb.comment@vermont.gov, or we have this meeting on the 20th, February 20th, and all of the comments that we receive there will be part of the rulemaking record. So that's all I got on those. Any questions about any of that? All right, next on the agenda is a request about an aspergillus study. And I'm wondering if we're joined by Callie Chapman from Onward Analytics and or Nick Castro from Stoneleaf.
Yes, I think we're both here. Nick,
Great.
Are you unmuted as well? Perfect. All right. So we are seeking approval to do a collaborative research study regarding aspergillus. I think this may be maybe one of the first collaborative research studies that we're doing as an industry, so we're pretty excited. The goal of this study is to evaluate the hypothesis that solventless extraction process could potentially be a remediation step or pathway for flower that has been contaminated with aspergillus. Given the nature of the study goes against current rules in the sense that right now contaminated flower cannot be transferred to a solventless extractor. We are seeking approval by the board and guidance on just proper regulatory pathways in order to perform the study. The study would involve ourselves, Stoneleaf, and a cultivator that has confirmed aspergillus contaminated flower. We would do the study at Stoneleaf's facility. Onward Analytics would be there to pull the samples. We would also, Onward Analytics would be providing a protocol for the study for board approval prior to executing, as well as a summary report on the study findings. The hypothesis is that aspergillus DNA, dead or alive, could potentially be washed away from the trichome heads that are separated during the washing process and be left behind in the wastewater. We would follow Stoneleaf's process, and we would be pulling, we would be testing the flower initially to confirm hits, probably with 5 data points instead of the traditional 3. We would be looking to test the wastewater to see if that is truly where the aspergillus goes and gets, washed away. We would be testing the dried hash and also the final rosin product, all for pathogen testing, to try to figure out, is this a viable pathway for remediation, and where did the aspergillus go if it truly doesn't show up in the final product? The idea is that the study would be for research purposes, so this wouldn't be, product that would be free to go to market. It would be evaluated by all the study participants. We would write up a formal report to present to the board of the findings, with the goal to try to offer more pathways for flower that is contaminated. After the first run, if we did see success, we would recommend doing 2 more reproducibility studies so that we're not just relying on one set of data. Our recommendation is that we would introduce the variable of dry flower and fresh frozen. So at least one of the reproducibility studies would be performed on fresh frozen. So that way we're looking at both dry and fresh frozen.
Kelly, how much product do you intend to sample between those three tests?
So the initial batch of flour that that we would like to use is about 8.5 pounds of dry material. We are going to be pulling about 10 grams between the hash and the rosin for testing, and then the wastewater, we'll do similar. And then the flour tests have already been confirmed here, so we do already have the data points on the flour.
And do you have any sense of whether any other state has done this, or any other company has tried this method?
I personally don't. Nick, do you have any insight on that?
I have not been able to find anybody who's tried to do a study like this.
Okay.
And my belief is, we know Aspergillus is all around us all the time. We've produced a large amount of hash and rosin for the state without a failed pathogen test at any time. So to believe that it wasn't present in some of the outdoor cultivation that we have processed and indoor, it would be kind of silly. So we would like to kind of put some evidence behind where it's going.
Yeah, good point. Anything else you wanted to add, Nick?
No, I think Callie did a great job. Just really would like to be able to offer cultivators another path forward and help us all get a better understanding, of whether these regulations that we have currently make sense.
That's great. Yeah. Any questions for Nick or Callie?
No, this sounds very interesting and innovative, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results.
Yeah.
Same. Thank you both.
Callie, we'd be able to see, I think you mentioned we could see those protocols, just maybe like share them with someone else, just to make sure like whatever the results are actually kind of reliable and can be.
The idea would be that we would author a protocol that would outline exactly what we're going to do in the experiment. If you are all open to it, I would appreciate if one of you signs off just giving consent from the board to perform this study, as well as on the summary report. But yeah, the idea would be, we have this hypothesis, let's go put some data behind it and either, strengthen the hypothesis, or maybe we find out, it's not successful. But if it is positive, it'd be very traditional in the science community to do 3 studies, all the same, and look at that data set. And then after we have 3 performed, really, lean on that study and look at it and try to see, is this something we could use to validate another remediation pathway?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I think we would need to vote on essentially a rule waiver.
Yep, and I think that would
Yeah.
provide Callie
Yeah.
with the approval she's looking for.
Yeah. So do you have a motion for
I
that?
do. I move that the board endorse the Aspergillus study described and authorized the waivers committee for the CCB to grant the waivers appropriate to facilitate the project.
And I will second.
Any discussion?
No, very much appreciate the information.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thanks so much for joining. Thanks for, conceiving of this. And I'm very interested in the results.
Awesome. Thank you for your approval.
Thank you.
All right. Just going down the agenda. So since our last meeting, we've submitted 2 additional legislative reports. I thought it'd be helpful for all of us to kind of just get a high level overview of what those reports say. And one is on the social equity program, and they kind of added on kind of reporting requirement to that.
Yep.
And then one is on outdoor sighting and advertising. Anyone want to go first?
I'm happy to go first.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about the section 15A report from Act 166 of 2024. Before I do that, we did have some folks that joined kind of halfway through. We had a public comment session at the beginning of the meeting, but we did add another public comment session at the end of the meeting, recognizing that you guys have had a busy day and there might be something you want to say. So there will be opportunity to comment on whatever you want to discuss at the end of the meeting. Just wanted to make sure that you had that time to kind of think through things as we kind of move through the agenda. So the Section 15A report, we were charged with looking at the Cannabis Business Development Fund to kind of understand how it should be funded moving forward, who should be eligible for it, what kind of recommendations can we make to kind of really make sure that the money that's going into it is used in a way that's beneficial to social equity applicants and those that are most vulnerable in this marketplace. And so I'm going to speed through it. I'm not going to share any slides. I think the beginning of the report, we have to do a biennium report on the social equity program, how it's going, what we've done, market data. This is on our website. You're more than willing to or able to go and look at our website and kind of see some of those numbers. That was put together by our executive director, the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and also the Office of Racial Equity. I wanted to kind of zone in on really the charge that we have done over the last year in trying to figure out what should be available to this fund moving forward. So I want to start with the charging language and then move into kind of process very quickly, and then the recommendations that were the result of that process. So the charge was the Cannabis Control Board shall work in consultation with the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, the Vermont Land Access and Opportunity Board, the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance, the Office of Racial Equity, and the Agency of Commerce and Community Development for purpose of making recommendations to the General Assembly regarding a percentage of the cannabis excise tax monies that should be appropriated to the Cannabis Business Development Fund for uses as provided pursuant to 7 VSA subsection 987. The Cannabis Control Board shall incorporate the recommendations into the Cannabis Social Equity Programs report required pursuant to 7 VSA 989. Hence my explanation at the beginning, how the first 28 pages are that required report that we need to do every 2 years or at the start of every biennium. So what we did is we met with the named parties and any other folks that were interested. And we had 4 meetings from August to December. I wasn't present at the last meeting. I was out on paternity leave, but it was really great to kind of see how folks came together and understanding the full working group discussion of that draft. Just very quickly wanted to go through some of the folks that we did hear from. Tim Tierney, who's the Director of Business Recruitment and International Trade at ACCD. We heard from multiple people at the Office of Racial Equity, including the Manager of Racial Justice Statistics, data analysts. We heard from the Executive Director of the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund. We heard from the Fund Administrator of the Massachusetts Cannabis Social Equity Trust Fund. We heard from retailers. We've heard from the named parties. We've heard from Rhodes Consulting Group. If you are a social equity applicant, you may have worked with Rhodes. We heard from a lot of folks that are familiar with how things have worked thus far and trying to figure out where we should go. We also heard from the Vermont State College System, Tim Egan. Good to see you, Tim. We heard from Liz Gleason, who runs the Vermont Farm and Forest Viability Program. We heard extensively from the Land Access and Opportunity Board. A lot of wonderful conversations. And again, if you look at the full report on our website, there's links to each one of these meetings. You'd be able to go back and watch those meetings and listen to the conversations as they kind of organically came about. So the first recommendation was to expand the scope of the Cannabis Business Development Fund to include Tier 1 outdoor cultivators and Tier 1 manufacturers with priority for social equity applicants. This means that after every social equity licensee has that availability to work with the Cannabis Business Development Fund, I think hopefully most of us can appreciate that the Tier 1 outdoor folks probably would benefit from some type of assistance from the Cannabis Business Development Fund when it comes to technical and business assistance and some of the other tools that the consultants who have worked in that kind of funding world have been able to provide to some. You know, as of the end of the year, we've had 601 total licenses, 102 of those maintain social equity status. These numbers might have changed. We'll find out in Olga's report here in a couple minutes. 94 tier 1 outdoor cultivators. 94 tier 1 outdoor cultivators, of which 6 maintain social equity status, 14 tier 1 manufacturers, of which 5 maintain social equity status. So expanding the scope to include tier 1 outdoor cultivators and manufacturers would increase the number of potential beneficiaries of this fund by 97 licensees. The next recommendation, which I think is really important if we're going to do that, is appropriate $1 million of the cannabis excise tax revenue annually to the Cannabis Business Development Fund to be used for some discrete purposes. You know, providing direct funding to social equity businesses and potentially tier 1 outdoor cultivators and manufacturers through beneficiary payments, contracting with a services coordinator to identify business needs, improving financial viability, and match licensees with service providers, and then establishing a network of advisors at partner organizations that can provide technical support and assistance tailored to individual need, like business planning, supply chain logistics, regulatory, tax compliance, HR management, land access and transfer, on-farm workshops, biosecurity, all the things that make a successful cannabis business moving forward. And part of the issue that we've heard about is there's so much federal funding entanglement, notwithstanding what some of the current administration is trying to accomplish at the federal level, that a lot of the ag support service providers around the state are a little agnostic, or excuse me, they're not agnostic. They're really hesitant to kind of jump headfirst into helping cannabis businesses because it's really hard to detangle funding streams with so many small businesses and service providers that we're looking to leverage and take up on their expertise. The third recommendation would be to develop a strategic action plan for the Vermont cannabis industry, including goals, objectives, strategies, and necessary funding. So to engage in scenario planning for future market conditions, whether that's federal legalization, whether that's interstate commerce, continued expansion of intoxicating hemp products, how that would affect our current licensees and the ability to sell, you know, traditional high THC products, developing stabilization strategies for annual post-harvest supply shocks, supporting regional hubs for processing, packaging, marketing, and distribution, on-farm post-harvest handling and storage. You know, a lot of this is done in the ag sector from a food hub perspective. How can we leverage the expertise that Vermont does well in the food and ag space here around the state? Reducing operational costs for small and local cultivators, subsidizing testing for tier 1 cultivators and manufacturers. You know, we heard at the beginning of this that we finally have a signed lease on a space for a new lab, which is really exciting. How can we leverage those services for a lot of folks that need to get multiple strains tested and continue to reduce some of those cost barriers? Provide matching grants for capital improvements and potentially enabling opportunities for direct-to-consumer sales if we can figure out a model that would both work to regulate and also to make sure that folks, if that is a new arrow in a small operator's quiver, how can it be successful and not, you know, if we think about direct sales, it accounts for 3 to 7% of an ag business's total sales. That would have to increase here to really be this rock star idea to save a lot of businesses and allow them to kind of control their business from seed to sale. The last big recommendation that we made really involves a lot of conversation with the Land Access and Opportunity Board and community reinvestment. So the last recommendation was to dedicate a portion of the cannabis excise tax to the Land Access and Opportunity Board for community reinvestment on some specific initiatives, down payment assistance grants to support home ownership and land access for disadvantaged Vermonters, financing and technical advising support for BIPOC and other emerging developers, seed and implementation grants for community-led affordable housing and community development projects, including land trusts, land banks, et cetera, strengthen community leadership of disadvantaged communities through advisory powers and community engagement. And the Land Access and Opportunity Board has indicated that about 25% of the cannabis excise tax annually will allow them to appropriately administer a lot of those initiatives. So I think we all thought it was important to kind of walk through this report. You might be hearing us testify and talk about this report with a lot of different committees, in addition to the report you're going to hear about next. And again, this report is on our website. There's links to a lot of different really cool information in here, whether it's other states that have community reinvestment programs, what they do, how they kind of operate, to watching the meetings and listening to some of the expert witnesses and support partners that we consulted with in developing these recommendations.
Thanks. Any questions about that? I mean, we lived through that one. No, but yeah. Julie, do you want to do outdoor siting?
Sure.
Advertising?
Yeah, sure. So Section 18 of Act 166 asked the board to report on 6 items that really covered 3 topics: the outdoor siting of cultivation, local control, and advertising. In that same bill was designed a work group for us to work with on these issues that included the Cannabis Equity Coalition, Vermont League of Cities and Towns, Vermont Medical Society, and the Cannabis Retailers Association. So we spent the summer as a board each taking a little bit of this and doing some inquiries to bring some information to those to the work group and that group of people to discuss later, which is what we did in the fall and sort of the first part of the winter. In some of those inquiries included a survey and roundtable with municipalities to better understand some of the issues that they're seeing and whether and unpacking sort of the impact on municipalities, which is a specific question. And it was also part of the cultivator roundtable to unpack sort of what is happening with cultivators and the impact on cultivators, which is another specific question for this report. And then we did a preliminary mapping study where we looked at where our cultivators are, overlaid that with the siting and setback regulations that are now in law, and looked to see, what the impact was on the cultivators that we have in businesses that we have operating right now. I would say there are some caveats to that report, and that it shows us sort of just the piece of land with the 10, 25, and 50-foot setbacks. It doesn't tell us, looking at a GIS map, if there are other restrictions on that piece of land that might make it difficult to cultivate in other areas. So we were looking to see, really just in the boundaries of the land, if somebody would be eliminated from cultivating where they are now. We met 4 times as a work group, unpacked a lot of these issues, discussed them. We also heard from Matt Bollinger, who is the Williston Planning Director, and Ben Verardi, who is an associate professor at Vermont Law and Graduate School, both who talked about land use regulation, local regulation, and cannabis cultivation and cannabis law. Well, Ben Verardi talked a lot about cannabis law. He's a cannabis law professor. From that, we produced a 25-page report, so a little light reading for you all at some point if you want to read it all. To make it easy to digest, the first 2 pages are really a summary of our responses to the legislature's requests. Then if you're reading one of those and you think to yourself, how did the Cannabis Control Board arrive at this decision? You can look further in the report and figure out what our logic was for that. So I tried to make it easy to read for folks because there's a lot of information that we dove into and gathered a lot of resources to provide for folks, to provide to the General Assembly to sort of understand this issue and its impact. A couple of things that I would point out just straight away in the report is the mapping study revealed about 11 businesses that we think could be directly impacted. And we pointed out to the legislature that there is a lack of clarity in the setbacks and how they'll be measured and the enforcement and how they affect current businesses. So those are the things that we've talked about just in the 2 sort of times that we've been to the legislature for introductory meetings, and we've brought those up in those meetings as well. That's the report in a nutshell. It is long and there's a lot of information, so I won't go much further other than to say there is a sort of a through line for both of these reports in which we talk a lot about our most vulnerable businesses. So our small social equity businesses and how they're impacted by regulation is really discussed in both of these reports.
Did you want to mention anything about advertising?
The request for advertising was to talk about the impact. So we talked about the impact on businesses. The chief concern I heard from businesses was competition, particularly along border towns, along New York border and Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and having to compete with advertising that we have limited jurisdiction over outside of the state of Vermont. So folks who can advertise in Vermont but are not operating in Vermont and competing with businesses that are here. And then from sort of the medical society and the prevention folks, we heard about a continued concern or a desire to ensure that whatever changes we make with advertising, that we do so with public health in mind.
Great. Any questions about that?
Nope.
No. Okay. Well, thank you for all the work that went into putting those together and for reviewing it today. Olga, can we shift over to the executive director report?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Okay, great.
Yes. That's good, right? Right. Oh. Secret touch. All right. So yes, here we are with this month's executive director report. So as usual, a quick update on our educational and outreach initiatives. So last week, we hosted a cannabis business and tax networking event. Again, if anybody happened to miss that lively discussion or would like to revisit it for any reason, please visit our website and get a link to the CCB YouTube channel. We are now, as the chair mentioned, in the process of updating our rules. And as a result, we have our next peer networking event devoted to the rules. So on February 12th at 10 o'clock in the morning. And Patrick will be posting this information on our website shortly. So on that date, we'll have a little lively discussion on the topic of the rules. Following that, we'll have our formal public hearing on February 20th at 9 o'clock in the morning, again on the rules. So again, two discussions coming up this month on their rules. And again, we encourage everybody to weigh in. And please attend both if you can, or at least pick one of those events so you can share your thoughts with us and keep thinking about the rules and how to make them better. All right, so now that I put that plug in, we'll move on to the next, under the main chunk of our agenda. So again, you'd look at the adult use program licensing data, and I'll keep it pretty brief in terms of the slides this month, but I will provide some additional context regarding our cultivation applications submitted ahead of the upcoming application deadline, as Chair alluded. Again, with the cultivation application window closing in 2 days, you'll see the current status update, and I'll highlight the efforts of our licensing team to manage the workload. So let's see what we got here. So again, as always, a quick review of the current active licenses. So again, a snapshot going back 3 months to make sure we pay attention to the trends. We are up to 610 active licenses. We gained 9 from December. And majority of the additions are in our retailer licenses. And those, we are at the very tail end of those licenses because those were the folks who got approved earlier and issued over the course of the last few weeks. So we only gained a couple cultivators and a manufacturer outside of the retailers. So again, I did take a look back 6 months just sort of for comparisons. And in July, we had 564 active licenses. So if you look across the last
6 months, our average gain is about 8 licenses a month. So we are tracking pretty steady in months over months in those numbers. I do want to flag that this data does not capture any cultivation applications pending in front of the board today, and we'll have quite a few. So we will see a substantial bump in the cultivator numbers in the next months and possibly the months after.
Maybe helpful in a future meeting
Mhm.
to also just go back to looking at some relinquishments as well.
Yep.
You know.
Okay. Add that. Yeah, we can add that in. Yep, we can add that information. All right, but now if we are good with that, just a quick look at the priority slides, and there are no changes months over months. So identical to last month's data. And from here, we'll just jump right into the retail slides. I have a couple slides here sort of to memorialize our retailers. In total, we have 109 retail locations and 3 additional integrated locations spread across 55 individual towns. And I believe we have 1 in a queue for your approval today. So if that one is approved, we'll be at 110. And again, we are, the application window is currently closed. So,
Remember what town that's the one in the queue?
Melissa.
Brattleboro.
Brattleboro.
Mm-hmm.
It might be nice.
Yep.
And I don't know if we've got like another meeting before the rules hearing, certainly before the end of the rulemaking process, to kind of get an overlay of where certain things are and how that matches up with some of the retail siting proposal that we've put together.
Yeah.
And even with some of the other proposals we might receive in public comment to kind of just get a better understanding of what. Yeah, and I mean,
capacity.
yeah, and I mean, there might be some towns that have opted in that don't have one right now. I don't know that off the top of my head, but kind of where certain things are without just doing a quick back of the napkin math saying, oh, this town doesn't have any. It's got, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe for the one that Patrick does, maybe have a slide on that.
Yeah, I don't know. Something might help contextualize.
Yeah. Definitely can work on that. All right. So that's, and from here, I just wanted to share the latest cultivation application numbers to sort of go over that. And I have a few slides for you to review. So jumping in. So here on this slide, we are looking at the total number of cultivation applications received by our team during the currently open cultivation application window. So in total, the total stands at 38 applications. Of this, 4 have been deemed stagnant due to a lack of action from the applicants for 6 months or more. So they're this gray color, sort of, faded color. But I did want to flag those because our team had proactively reached out to those applicants to inform them about the upcoming closure of the application window to ensure that all businesses, including those businesses, were aware of the opportunity to finalize submissions if they wished to do so. That said, this leaves us with 34 active and engaged cultivation applicants that our team has been working with very closely. And I had, since, the slide gives you information on their priority status, you could probably tell rather quickly that the majority of those are our standard applicants and quite a few economic empowerment, and also 4 applications fell under the social equity category. So that's slide number 1 on this. If we're good, I'll move to the next. Okay. All right. Right here, we are looking at the 34 active applications for cultivation, and we're reviewing them by type and tier. So again, you could see here the most populous groups are indoor and outdoor tier 1, followed by mixed tier 1, with 13, 10, and 7 applications respectively for those categories. And then few in tier 2 category. Good. Okay. So next, we are looking at the status of this 34 active pending applications. So the largest subset, 15 out of 34 in green, is actually on today's board agenda for approval. So 15 of them have gone through all the steps necessary. Another 10 applications, and those are shown in yellow and orange. So if you combine, have completed all of their administrative requirements, but are waiting on a site visit from our field agents and or a completion of their background check process. Again, these are on track to become administratively complete in the very near future, pending those 2 outstanding requirements. So yeah. And then finally, 9 applications are currently deemed incomplete, as they have outstanding requirements beyond the need for a site visit or a background check.
It's all outdoor?
No,
They're all different, all kinds of.
yes, that's everybody who is in the queue.
Is there any overlap between the yellow and the orange column?
No. Yellow is just the site visit, and orange has both of those requirements. Yep. Okay.
And are all those site visits scheduled, do you know?
Most of them are, unless somebody has come to their completion yesterday, for example. So those folks might not yet be scheduled, but it's everything. You'll see, I have a couple more slides that will show you the turnaround timeline. So that could kind of shed a little more color. Oh, sorry, skipped. So on this slide, we are focusing on the 9 incomplete applications specifically, and sort of to give you a breakdown of the most common, the outstanding needs. So, for example, if you look at the green color here, that's missing bank letters of intent. This means that 7 out of 9 applicants still need to meet that requirement, right? Then lacking site-specific information category, we have 6 applicants that need to provide additional details and say tax compliance issues. 5 applicants have that requirement on the list. So most folks have several of those requirements to complete. And again, our licensing team is actively working with these businesses, ensuring that they understand what's required to complete their applications and meet the January 31st deadline. And again, the focus is on providing clear communication and support during this process. So those are the
It's my understanding
Yep.
that the good standing letter is something that can be achieved very, very quickly. So I just hope that no one's thinking that's you have to pay off all your back taxes in order to get that. Like the people enter into payment plans,
Right.
they can do it very, very quickly with the Department of Taxes.
we do provide that guidance. So we try to make it clear, what's needed.
Fire safety, they've been relatively responsive. So
Yeah, most folks are, as you can see, it's our least populous category. So that has been one of the easier requirement to meet.
you know if, and I can find out on my own, do we know if East Rise, which is the former VSCCU and then EFCU, has resumed cannabis banking?
I actually, we're not sure. We can look into that. I'm not sure.
There are new applicants here that are
Okay, East
getting
Rise.
letters from East Rise.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay. Can I? Okay, I'll move on then. I have one final slide here. So that's an interesting slide. So here we are looking at the timelines for when our licensing team received the most recent round of the cultivation applications. And I also wanted to take the time to highlight the efficiencies around processing pending applications over the last few weeks. So the light green block That's represents 5 applications that were submitted actually before the board's announcement about the upcoming closure. And all 5 of this have successfully gotten through their administrative review and are on today's agenda. So those folks are on the list. The blue block, that's 19 additional applications that came in between November 20th and January 19th. So in a couple months. And most of these applications are also on today's agenda. So we gotten through those. And then finally, we got 10 applications submitted in just the last 10 days, showing a final push before the deadline by a number of businesses. And I wanted to just say that huge shout out to the team. The average turnaround time for processing these applications, if you exclude the site visits and background check process, has been about 2 weeks. So it's really amazing, incredible work. And just to kind of cement that, out of the 10 most recent submissions, so the ones that came in just the last 10 days, 5 have already been deemed administratively complete by our team, pending site visits and background checks, which again, you know, if you think of the applications coming in the last 10 days, it's hard to do that work and schedule site visits. So again, it's been a great commitment by the team to do such timely processing. But I also wanted to share our appreciation for the effort from a number of businesses who really submitted complete application packages on their first try that has allowed us to make this happen. So that's sort of what I wanted to.
That's great.
No, yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How long, Olga, is a background check taking now? Has that changed at all?
I don't know that that has changed, but we're trying to work with CSI to kind of streamline a few things and add additional functionalities to their processes. So, you know, it will get better.
Okay, thank you.
It'll be curious to see if renewals kind of speed up even more without folks renewing needing to do CSI for 4 years.
Yeah, that should help. That's our big hope as well. All right, so that sort of is what I had for the cultivation update, and now sort of pivoting to the compliance data, the usual sort of chunk of the ED report. Kind of before going into the data, I just wanted to share a quick staffing update for this team. We welcomed a new team member, Alex Ryu, about 6 weeks ago. He, in a short time already, he's become instrumental in supporting the product registration efforts primarily, and is doing field work in the southern region of the state. We are incredibly grateful to having him on the team, and he's already made huge strides, especially on the critical PR efforts. So we're excited about that. And we are also in the final stages of hiring another compliance aid and enforcement agent. So this means we'll anticipate having a 7th full-time field agent joining us in the coming weeks. And with that expanded capacity, we do feel that our team should be well equipped to manage the workload that's already at 610 licenses, plus the influx of new cultivation licenses expected soon, hoping to provide even much improved support to the licensed community. So again, we're excited about those changes. And so now I'll jump into the actual numbers for January. So here you're looking at the summary of the inspections and investigations. We are reporting 60 inspections and 7 new active investigations for January.
And the inspections, Olga, those are both routine and other related to a complaint inspections?
No, those would be captured under investigation.
Okay.
So if we had to have a follow-up, something specific, they would not be here. Those are routine.
So those are all routine.
Yeah. Or unannounced, and if we were to do something, but not related to investigations.
Got it.
Yep. So that's the first, and I'll we'll take a closer look at each category next. So first, inspections. So that's again sort of routine inspections over the course of the last 3 months, sort of to show any changes and trends. January numbers are in the light gray. So 31 cultivation site inspections, matching actually last month's number. Then 20 retail inspections, 7 manufacturing, and 2 wholesale. That's what the team is reporting for January. And then we'll look at the investigations next. So again, gray color is what is representative of the January data. 7 new investigations here, so 2 in cultivation, 4 in retail, 1 in manufacturing. And we also have 2 additional investigations that are still ongoing from the last month. So we actually have 9 open investigations that the team is working through. So that's that. And now our sort of compliance actions in general. So you could see here that for the month of January, we got 20 new complaints. We issued 2 formal letters of warning, 1 notice of violation, 2 witness destructions of product, and 3 cessations of operation that were documented by our staff. Next is more specifically the types of complaints that our compliance and enforcement team received and processed. And the majority of those are related to advertising, with a few others on the list as well. You could see a full list. And then a couple quick slides. That's the reasons behind the warning letters that the team processed. So just 2 last months, advertising and age verification issues addressed, and just 1 notice of violation. And that was related to the issues with business operations. And that's the last slide on compliance action. And now a quick look at the medical program. And just 1 slide here. You're looking at the year worth of data. We've actually noticed a small bump in numbers. We'll keep an eye on this, whether this turns into a trend or if it's just something about the timing of the folks jumping in or renewing, or maybe lapsed licensures that folks renewed. We'll see, but a little jump in numbers. Okay, and that is all for the data. So we're now moving on to the staff recommendations for licensure. And first, as always, we have staff recommendations for initial licensure. And I have 2 slides here for you. So slide number 1, and you could see primarily cultivators on the list, with a retailer that had an additional time to finalize their application process.
And for the people that join by phone, this usually goes up by the end of the day on our website.
And I'll go to the second slide. Okay. So those are the initial applications. Not sure if there is a motion now or after the renewals.
Like a motion.
Sure.
I move that the board adopt staff recommendations to approve applications listed, issuance subject to any final payment, required fees, and any other contingencies.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And now we are onto the conventional license renewals, and I also have 2 slides here. Okay, now. Our second slide. Again, and all licenses on this and the previous slide are recommended for approval by our staff.
All right, is there a motion to approve these?
I move that the board adopt staff recommendations to approve the applications listed, issuance subject to any final payment of required fees and any other contingencies.
And I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you on that. And so now here's a list of the late renewal applications for the board's review, just 2 on a list for you today. And again, under the Rule 115.1D, these businesses have supplied all of the required documentation and have also provided letters explaining their late filings. Staff recommends that the board accept and approve these late renewals.
Is there a motion for that, Julie?
I move that the board adopt the staff recommendations to accept and approve the applications listed, issuance subject to any final payment of required fees and any other contingencies.
And I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. And one more slide. So these are the applicants who seek continuation to next meeting. They have filed their explanations for untimely filing, but they're still missing some elements required for renewal. The board has been shared materials and explanations ahead of this meeting. But again, the board cannot approve this since these applications, given that some elements of the applications are missing. The board, though, has discretion to accept the incomplete applications and continue the existing licenses for a short period to allow the renewal process to be completed. And that's our staff recommends that the board accept these late filings and continue the existing licenses in force until the board's next meeting. Next regular meeting is February 26th. That's would be ideal, I think.
Any questions about that for Olga?
No.
All right. Is there a motion?
I move that the board adopt the staff recommendations to accept and continue to allow the renewal process to be completed.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Olga. Thank you, licensing and compliance. Gabe
And Patrick.
and Patrick. That was great. I know so much work goes into producing those and all the, not to mention all the work that happens in the background to make those renewals happen. So last thing on our agenda is we added one last public comment section. I just want to say that if you have a public comment about our rules, I went through some kind of high level overview of 10 of the more significant changes to our rules. Anything you comment today will not be a part of the official rulemaking record. It will certainly be in the contemplation of our minds when you comment on it. But as far as things that we're legally required to respond to, it won't be part of that. But I invite anyone who would like to comment to either raise your virtual hand or I'll start with anyone in the room. If you want to come up, I think just make sure you're captured on the microphone.
Right.
And if it's red, just tap the little microphone button.
Red, I hit it.
Yeah, exactly. Fran, it's good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. We have never met. I know Julie, James, but Kyle, very nice
Pleasure.
to meet you and everybody else. I'm here today from the southern part of Vermont.
Hit that button really quick.
This one, oh, hit that. I was supposed to hit it. Okay. Thought it was supposed to be red. Let me identify myself. I'm Francis Janik. I live in Jamaica, Vermont. I'm a Vermont medical patient for many years, and I'm one of the original advocates for legalization. I carried the first plant into the first dispensary to open in Montpelier. I don't care what anybody else says, we did it first. And I'm here today once again to ask the board and ask everyone that's in charge to work on the availability of clean, effective, and affordable cancer meds. RSO is what I'm talking about, Rick Simpson oil. I gave a testimony in Ann Pugh's committee many years ago on the third floor of the State House, where I described a Vermont patient having to go over the border into Canada to get these medicines. when they weren't available then. We didn't have clean, effective, and affordable products from certain dispensaries, certainly. We are at a point now where I had a discussion with a gentleman, the gentleman who has the Vermont Patient Alliance license now, and I'm encouraged by that. But we are at a point now where we've had the corporations back out of a number of the licenses. And as we had discussed in previous conversations when I was online, they were worried about what would happen if they disappeared and how would we deal with this. And I see in our community so many people that are capable of creating these oils. They can't afford the licensing to go forward to actually stand out. I see some people that are in the room or in the room today in the State House that are trying to do this without much money. I see dispensaries giving major discounts to patients just to get rid of the tax on it. And so the tax in this, the availability of these really important oils for cancer patients, but we still have patients that have to go out of state for this. And in some cases, the people that are really serving them were able to create these oils for, let's say, a 60-gram protocol for approximately $2,000 to $3,000. When we were first starting this out many years ago, it was $10,800 for a product that wasn't even properly dosed. So what I'll say to you today is, if I can give you any ideas, I'd be happy to contribute, but I'd like you to keep that in mind, because as we have expanded into retail, and many of the products that the medical patients were need were no longer made even by the corporation in Burlington. When a young lady couldn't get her patches for her seizures is one good example. So please let us open this up to a small license, possibly. I know I'm asking for the world here, but to a small license where a small person can create these oils inexpensively and get them to the patient directly. And I see these people every single day, and they can't walk, and they can't get help, and their meds are growing. And so thank you very much for taking my testimony today.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you, Fran. And I would like to follow up. I mean, I can just tell you what, totally inadequate to meet the need, but we've been successful in reducing the price of a medical dispensary from $25,000, which is ridiculous, down to $5,000. Not enough. We've extended the plant count for medical patients.
Thank you.
Again, not enough for RSO though, you know, no. I get it. You know, we've extended the expiration of a card from 1 year to 3 years.
Appreciate it.
Like, you know, we're trying to, we actually put some kind of hooks in the integrated license that said, if you're going to try and play on the adult use side, you have to maintain at least a 3-month supply of all the products for all your patients. Of course, that's an impossible to really regulate well.
Right, but the cost for these people with their $10,000 license is an extra $250 on top of a $10,000 license. I think that's excessive, if I may.
Yeah.
And I don't see any reason for charging $250 for somebody to do something that's right and taking the time and cost. I know there's a gentleman in the room here, or there was in the State House, who told me basically he couldn't afford the tax costs or for the tax account on that kind of a thing. So any way that we can bring those costs down, and if we've got a guy who's got a clean lab and clean product and he can prove it, and he can provide that directly to the patient, then he can at least break even to do that. People are losing money doing it.
When we have our lab, we've written that we want to subsidize the cost of this testing.
I'm just catching up, by the way. I've been out of the loop for a bit, so I do appreciate the information.
I will say that our proposed rules do look to bring the medical market in line with our adult use market from a testing regime perspective. So
that's wonderful. I think we definitely needed that. Obviously, that was proved in the past.
But we don't want to increase the cost for patients, though. So I feel like, in doing that, I feel like we have to have the conversation about subsidizing those.
Right. But if I can get quality oil, and I know I can, okay, and I can get a system that works to dose it properly, which very often has not been done. An accurate 25 milligram capsule, an accurate 1-to-1 capsule. And this is a lab that I worked with in Maine that unfortunately went out of business because an insurance company cost them too much. And we had reciprocal situation for patients from Vermont. And so that's what I'm running into right now is the last protocol's gone from that lab. And now I'm looking to find out where I can help the patients that are around me now. I'm not making money. I'm not doing this for a living. Okay, I'm helping. But this is what we need to do, is to get that cost down on those oils and get the availability up and make it available so a patient doesn't have to drive all the way to Montpelier or Waterbury or Burlington. And again, in Southern Vermont, basically, as you know, there is nothing available right now. So thank you again. Is there anything else?
Just keep kind of helping us brainstorm on this stuff, because we agree with you. I mean, we saw this coming when they did adult rec. It was going to further this kind of precipitous decline in patient registries, further make the economies of scale.
If you take the tax off, I bet you're going to get 1,000 new patients in a week, and you'll be scrambling to get them all in and get the cards ready. You take the tax off because they're all going to the parallel market. If I can buy a $180 ounce that's being imported from somewhere else that's clean, and I've got to go to a dispensary, even though I love Tito Burns product, okay, I've got to go to a dispensary and spend 3 times as much to get it. Okay, you can't expect somebody who has low income, and most of these people, and this is the problem with cancer patients, don't have any money. So I laud the people that are in these dispensaries now that are giving 10, 15, 20% discount, but they're killing their businesses. The growers are in the same position. You know, I looked at one friend of mine who was a grower in the State House today, and he was sad, basically sad. So anything we can do to lighten the burden on these people as they go through the process in all phases of this, whether it be allowing farm to table, as has been discussed. And I appreciate the tax, wanting to remove the tax and all those things. So thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks for driving up.
That's all right. I got a good buddy, and Eli gives me a place to stay, so I'm not going 3 hours in the morning, 4 in the morning.
Nice to meet you in person.
Yeah. All right. Very nice to meet you as well. And all of you.
Anyone else in the room want to make a public comment? Yes, Lauren, please.
Right. Yeah. Hi, my name is Lauren Andrews. I'm a nurse clinical aromatherapist, and I own Capital Cannabis Company in downtown Montpelier. I just want to reinforce some of the points that the gentleman before me was bringing up. And I think that the hardcore reality is that we have this horribly underserved medical people in this medical program, and retailers like myself are the ones that are carrying the brunt of it, because we want to be able to serve people in this community. Like you said, we're giving huge discounts to try to make it easier for people to be able to afford these things. And it's a burden. It's a tremendous burden for retailers who are doing this. And we do it from a heart place. But when you look at the bottom line at the end of every month, it bites. And it shouldn't be the responsibility of the retailers to carry this weight. But we do it because we want to help, right? I feel like most of the people that get into this business come from a place of heart, and want to help others. And but it's becoming so burdensome for recreational dispensaries owners to keep doing this. So I know that you're working on this. I think what really makes sense is to be able to identify certain retailers that meet certain criteria, particularly around education. I've got a lot of advanced training in cannabis science and medicine, and I understand the value of that type of education. So I don't believe that medical patients should necessarily be able to go to retail settings where people don't have adequate training. So I just want to stress that. I think that with this responsibility becomes, it's necessary to get advanced training. So you're actually able to deal with some of this, and having really qualified staff on board that can handle medical patients. I'm a nurse, and I even know what the boundaries are around that. You don't give medical advice. You can speak anecdotally about things like that, but so I just want to stress that the need for education if you're going to go in this direction, but around things being accessible and affordable, and making sure that people have the products that they need. That I believe strongly that needs to happen, because if it doesn't happen, I think that the medical program is just going to go away. It just isn't going to be a viable thing anymore. And the other thing I wanted to mention too is, we're looking at the number of licenses per capita as we're looking in the state. I know I'm shifting gears to something else. So we were, I'm a part of the Cannabis Retailers Association, and we were just doing some research about number of dispensaries per capita in different states. Because when we were looking at the rule changes that were being put forth, we're like, well, where are they getting these numbers? You know, number of dispensaries per capita. And when we started looking into it, we realized that Vermont, we're way out of whack. I mean, just as an example, in Massachusetts, we've got about 7 million people with 417 dispensaries. But basically that translates to 1 dispensary per 16,782 people. All right. And in Vermont, the numbers we came up with, we had with 112 dispensaries. I know that's not consistent with what we are at now, but Vermont, the population is roughly around 648,000 people, and that's 1 dispensary per 5,780 people. That's the third the number in Massachusetts, which is right over the line. And so I put that out there, and I know that the CRAV has sent, if we haven't yet, we're going to send you more detailed information about these ratios, but just looking at it initially, I just have to ask, where are these numbers coming from that you're coming up with, like 2 dispensaries per in a town of 4,000 people? Like, where did the numbers come from? It'd be great if you guys could share the data that you're using in order to come up with these numbers, because from my perspective, it looks like it's just being made up. Because when you look at actual data around concentration and as it relates to population, we're not even close to what is sustainable or normal in other states. So I'm just putting that out there. I mean, we can throw numbers out there, but it's important to be able to back up those numbers with statistics. And when you look at statistics, they don't support the numbers that are being put out there right now. Okay, that's all for me.
That's great. Anything you can do. I mean, we had to do something, and like the legislature did not take this on themselves, which they should have. They gave it to us because they thought that our process maybe allows for a lot more input. So feel free to kind of make sure you get that kind of comments to us, or CRAB gets those comments.
We will. We'll get it over for sure.
And I would just say
you will find it eye-opening.
I would just say contextually, and the Agency of Commerce Community Development, Department of Tourism just testified at Senate Economic Development. We rely on tourism numbers 3 times more than any other state. If you're looking at the national average on who relies on any product, whether it's cannabis or otherwise, from a state resident versus somebody who's visiting that state for tourist activities. So again, I think context is key. I struggle sometimes to kind of, and again, our numbers are based on residents, but I think, we can't forget the tourists who come here and blow up populations at very specific times of the year and frequent downtown settings. So, again, I think context is key. I also wanted to respond to the first part of your comment. I think one of the next things that we need to do is review the proposals we got from the RFP on medical educators.
I was just going to ask about
for the medical use endorsement stuff.
Education. Do you have an idea in your mind of what the appropriate level of education is? Like, I heard you say you're a nurse, so I'm thinking, like, is it an LNA level? Is it a RN level? Is there a particular level of education that someone should have in your mind?
I believe that there should be some sort of certification program that is accessible for, you don't not have a medical degree to be able to participate in that program, and have a very focused certification program that for bud tenders and people who work in these settings that want to know what they're talking about and want to make sure that they're bringing evidence-based information to people. It's a fine line there, because you don't want to overstep, but you also don't want people giving advice when they don't have adequate training to do so. It's a huge responsibility. And, but there's a huge need. 2 medical dispensaries is not cutting it. And we're already working with medical patients. We just are. I think we just need to be able to move forward and be able to do it in a way to make sure that people are adequately trained, and that we're not being hurt financially by having these ongoing discounts for this population. It's a heavy load. It really is. And I want to go back to around tourism. My store is in Montpelier, a tourist heavy town. I can tell you that the vast majority of my customers are locals. We get some tourists that come in, but a lot of tourists, they're buying stuff in Massachusetts before they hit the border. And I've heard that over and over again. So, and I think that there are some businesses that do get more tourist action, like at the ski areas. But again, that's seasonal. So I wouldn't place too much importance on those tourist numbers because I don't, it's really the locals that pay our bills. They're the ones that are coming to us mostly. At least I can speak to that in Montpelier. That's my experience. The second, yeah, I think there's a lot of discussion about tourist dollars and yeah, we see it, but it's locals that keep our doors open.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Anybody else in the room? Noah? Tito?
Everybody, it's nice to be here. First, shout out to Eli. Thanks a lot for bringing us out for the Cannabis at the Capitol event. I'm Tito from Burn Legacy and Burn Gallery. And also thanks for our renewal. I really appreciate it as always. And I love the medical endorsement. I'm so excited that finally something is changing. I have a ton of thoughts about it though, so I'm going to issue it in writing so as not to take up too much time here. But just constantly, it just feels like the danger of cannabis is so overblown. It feels like sometimes like we're handling something so dangerous. It's wild, and so sometimes the rules sometimes reflect this. And with the medical endorsement, like that the products can't even be seen, like even by an adult retail customer, just off the top of my head. But in general, I just see this constantly coming through. It just feels like it's something really dangerous we're handling when it feels overblown. As far as the advertising, the border towns, definitely that's a thing, but it's the illicit market. It's like we're still just treated, with these rules like we're doing something wrong. We can't advertise, and I know we can advertise, but really, it feels like we can't advertise at all. That's really how it feels. And then lastly, shout out to major appreciation to Callie and Nick for that aspergillus study. We got to see some change there, whether it's a threshold and not just a pass-fail, or whether it's the mycotoxin testing, so which is the actual dangerous part, and most of all, just you guys for having an open mindset to seeing that it could change and be a little better for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tito. Thank you. Noah?
Hi, I'm Noah Fishman from Vermont Patients Alliance and Zen Barn. So I guess I just wanted to make a few points. I think we're kind of uniquely positioned in that we are one of the 2 remaining medical dispensaries, one of 2 now vertically integrated licenses. One, in terms of these vertically integrated licenses, I would like us, I would ask you guys to consider how that now relates to the rest of the license holders. I feel like we've been in this bubble of different rules and regulations, different fees, expectations that kind of made sense for big corporations, that you could try to carve out something from. And now we're literally in the same boat as everyone else. We're small local businesses, at least, speaking for ourselves, trying to make this work, inheriting a pretty big project, trying to bring what is one of the premier facilities back into Vermont hands and solving some of these issues. We have ability to produce RSO, really great, high quality for our med patients. We know what the med patients need. They have intense needs and they need very, very affordable product. We are subsidizing heavily the cost, our products. We make no money on our products at Med. We are pushing, we've looked at the cost to produce and we're selling them as low as possibly can. And often it's still not enough, and yet I guess the point I want to make is that we're not in a position where we're making the money on the rec side to really be subsidized. We have no business to be subsidizing from a business perspective, the med side at all. we're doing it, and we're trying. We have the capacity to serve, the current license holders have the capacity to make all the products med holders need. What they don't have the capacity for is to provide it at the price that our current folks need. So I don't think that we can be asked to solve that problem. We're doing it, and we're because we're passionate about it, but we need help, like financially, to do that, to make that, to really meet their needs for the current medical population, which is a very narrow group, people with intense issues and often low income. So we're dealing with a very specific population. One way I think we could start to do that is by, a failing rec market does nothing for the med market. If we didn't have our rec side, there would be no med side. So I just want to say that all these issues we're talking about in the rec, the over-regulation, the over-taxation, the difficulties getting products to market, all those things, advertising restrictions, all affect med too. There's no way we can survive. The rec subsidizes the med, and there's very little money to be made, if any, in med. So want to make that point, and I encourage you guys to sort of think about the resources we have, and can we find funding to, if we want to add more burden to existing businesses, I'd really ask you to think about, where does the money come from? Are we being asked to, pay for increased training, pay for subsidized products, lower cost product? I would love to be able to provide legitimate low cost product to med customers, but for us to subsidize that is increasingly difficult. It's going to be difficult for anybody that tries to do it. So that's it.
Yeah. Well, no, I would just really suggest, you are in a very unique position, as you mentioned, just really going through those rules that are specific to, the integrated licensees, and with a red pen, and kind of figuring out what's no longer necessary. We really haven't touched the integrated license rules since before the market launched, because we haven't thought much about those licenses. And it's probably an opportune time to take a look. And then I don't know, like, the fee is what the fee is. The legislature set it very high, and because they knew what happened. They set the fee after all those businesses transferred, and they might be willing to lower it now that the kind of on the ground situation has changed.
Thank you. It's a good time to think about changes. So we're all ears. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is the endorsement fee set in statute now?
Yeah, the endorsement fee is $250. Yes. Yep. Sorry, I see your hand up, Sean. We just have a few people in the room that we're prioritizing. So we got an event later this afternoon.
Hi, I'm Bailey Evans, and I'm the owner of Higher Elevation in Morrisville, Vermont, which is a retail store. I kind of want to add on to all the medical things. We've been open for over 2 years, and we've always provided aid via discount to our medical, just because they were in Burlington was always one of the closest areas. And we've noticed in the last month, we've had an increase of medical patients because of the closure of Cirrus. And it is cutting into our bottom line rapidly. We don't want to deny people these things, but we cannot continue operating at this level for an extended period of time at all. So I guess I love the proposed change that we can have a medical endorsement so that we can, actually be hopefully not in the red on these patients, and we can still continue helping them. But I guess the question is, when is that relief going to come? Because you can only sustain so long going in the red on more and more of these customers that are also patients, because one of the major medical dispensaries has been shut down.
Well, we're authorized to begin issuing those on July 1st. Yeah.
That is.
It's in statute. We can't expedite that, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, but at least it gives us a date. Thank you.
And if there's any comments, not right now, but on the medical use endorsement rules that you think might be prohibitively expensive for achieving because we try to make it as easy as possible because you guys are doing that work already. Don't make you pay the tax as well, is the kind of concept behind it. So look at the rules on the medical use endorsement. And
I've read all of them and I do have comments, but I'm just going to submit them physically so you have it on record.
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
that's great.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else in the room? Okay. On the virtual meeting, I think it was Sean first and David Silverman second. And anyone else who would like to make a comment, please just raise your virtual hand.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I know a lot of conversations are needed with folks in the room I haven't seen in a while. I have been a caregiver before there was a medical program in state. My first few patients were terminal family members that were ineligible for the medical program anyway. They were VA members. I have been a lifelong consumer on the rec side, for better or worse. I came in the legacy and legal CBD market and have come all the way through legalization. I spent the last weeks being a part of the wind down operations team of Integrated License Number 1, Ceres, Vermont, Champlain Valley Dispensary, call it what you will. I have been crying for days and weeks over having to oversee responsibly destructing medicine. It's been heartbreaking to me. My list is long. I will submit everything in writing, so it will be on full record and useful. On the Senate agricultural meeting that you guys were a part of the other day, as was stated, we are unlike any other market in the US. Somehow, how our market was created, why it was created, that it was done unlike any other fashion. Unfortunately, the rest of the rollout has also been unlike any other fashion. A lot of these issues are like what was stated in that meeting, that we are operating on meters that have no feelings. Advertising, specifics about health and use in relation to potency, and a couple other things in particular. There was a 7 Days article recently about the medical program, and Chairman, you were quoted as saying, "This to me is not about injecting new life into the program. It's about making sure that existing patients and the people that the legislator has deemed qualified to access medical cannabis still have that access." I appreciate that we're trying to maintain the integrity of what is there, but if we are trying to be an innovative state, if we are trying to foresee what's going to happen with federal rescheduling and what happens pharmaceutically with these compounds for patients, that why are we, as an agricultural state, as a state that has very highly respected university programs and trying to get into the whole research thing for the university level, why are we not at the forefront of doing studies, of trying to figure out how we can grow these compounds, manufacture these compounds, and start leading the way? And when rescheduling happens and every other state in the rest of the market is operating on metric, and some company wants our product, or we want to bring in a really good product from somewhere else, and they're like, how do we import? And we're like, go to ccb.vermont.gov and hopefully the link works. We are not set up right now to really make those larger moves. For better or worse, craft versus MSO, I don't care right now. These things are coming. We are not set up very well to deal with them. At the moment, we're trying to, again, quote, shape the behavior of existing consumers. The existing consumers are in the black market. Well, we can't advertise at all, or, I use that term loosely, but we can't advertise enough to reach those customers in the black market. The people that are on the, what we're calling border towns, are getting advertised to, and they're getting advertised products that are higher potency, higher serving sizes. So yeah, our locals are going to go right across border because they know where to go. It's been advertised to, and they know that they can get the products they want. Same thing with 60% cap on concentrates, 30% cap on flour. We deem 60% cap on concentrates a public healthcare crisis somehow. For me to walk around with a real dab rig, a glass, quartz rig and a blowtorch on Church Street, probably not going to happen. But we can go walk up and down Church Street right now and see people vaping face on 80 to 90% diamond and sauce pens. That's not a healthcare issue concern to me, like compared to me sitting in the comfort of my living room with a quartz and torch rig, just, so potency caps, medical market. Yes, rec stores can start selling quote unquote medical product. Great. 60%, stronger than that, 30% stronger than flower, large dose edibles. Great. Who is making them? How are those products being tested? And I know you guys are addressing that, but just to have it out there for everybody in the room. You guys were asked by Agriculture Committee the other day, how are you, and they were asking you, but is that you telling us eventually, how do we get these things instituted? Are they proposals to the governor? Are they bills to be put forward? And I know that you guys are always very forward of saying we are just an advisory group. And I'm wondering what the shift can be in perspective or attitude for you all of not just an advisory committee, but an advocacy committee now. Because there were very few people in that agriculture committee from our industry, be they consumers, manufacturers, whatever. I felt very small in that group, but being like, wow, the 4 or 5 of you are directly talking to the senators. I invited one of them, hopefully, to this meeting just to hear the public comments. I'm like, if the senators want to know what's happening at the cultivator level, the patient level, you guys are not boots on the ground every day talking to patients out at all the grows, that the senators might be very well served to start coming into the CCB meetings and hearing public comment, rather than just like, well, we get together this week, which is really huge, but as soon as this week fades, we move it to the lawmakers, they stamp it, and we roll forward with whatever's rolled out. So like, governor proposals, bills, and you guys hopefully helping us as the public figure out how to really push these things forward. So yes, I'll be writing a formal letter to put, formalize my comments. I'll be speaking again on the 20th, but what to be tracking on outside of those particulars that like, do we need to be pushing you guys to make a governor proposal, to be pushing other bills forward, outside of the designated, well, this is when we're just going to talk about weed on the schedule. There's $17 million of tax revenue floating around, I believe was the number for 2024, almost $20 million. There's 600 principals. How many employees are working a 40-hour week, growing the weed, packaging the gummies, selling all the products? How many of those folks have health care and paid time off compared to that $20 million floating around our system? How many patients don't have access right now compared to $20 million just haphazardly floating around a system? The local economy is what props it up compared to this tourist stuff and seasonal things. We're an agricultural state. We want to be innovative. Rescheduling is happening. We'd like to douse the black market as well at the same time. Like, yeah, way more, and I'll try and make it a little more concise and thoughtful, but thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for us as a regulatory board to also be a advocacy organization. It just is, there is a blurring of the lines that happens with that. However, today, our message to the legislature is you need to listen to the industry. I mean, you need to understand the hardships that the cannabis industry is under. We just, in the report that Kyle spoke about today, one of the statutory requirements, or what are the ongoing challenges that this industry faces, and we have a laundry list of them that not just goes beyond just any small business, which how many of them, any small non-cannabis businesses fail within the first 2 years. Well, now try adding 200 pages of regulation on top of that, and costs that no other business has to deal with.
Yeah, certainly. And one of the best, one of the better quotes from the agriculture meeting when you guys were talking about submitting those 2 reports was that the 2 reports indicate the jurisdiction of the CCB, and it would behoove all of us as the public to really understand what your guys' jurisdiction is. And it's not to hold your feet to the fire being like, sorry, you aren't professional stoners, but to really understand how to effectively utilize you all as, you know, you can't advocate, but in terms of helping the public understand the process. Well, here are the ways that consumers or, you know, retailers, cultivators. So the 2 reports, you know, I highly encourage the public to go out and see what the CCB's jurisdiction is, just to, you guys have to do the legalese. We can't do these things, but we can hopefully figure out how to implement the system you all have been given to kind of force some of these changes.
Yeah. And we wrote just on the potency caps, and then we should move on, but we've written, I think now 3 reports on the efficacy of those caps. And in each one, we've essentially come to the conclusion for the legislature that they're doing more harm than good. And the legislature they're not persuaded by us. When we say that, they may be persuaded by the industry. And I always try and take the tack, like, this isn't like alcohol or pharmaceuticals where there's this, you know, like this is the only option for folks. There is a vibrant illicit market and a vibrant intoxicating hemp-derived market operating right alongside this market that's doing fundamental damage to this market. And you prohibit something over here, you're just pushing consumers over there. And, you know, I think that's the most effective argument that has landed, because that's the whole purpose of doing tax and regulate to begin with. But it still is just not, it still has not landed with the kind of a majority of the legislature.
Yeah, maybe let us know if it needs to be a governor proposal track or a really specific bill track would be just asking it rhetorically at the moment. Thank you.
Right.
Most bills are proposed by an individual legislator. They don't typically come from the governor's office. So just if you're talking to your legislators, that's just something you should know about the process.
Dave, I had you next. Dave Silverman.
Thanks. Again, sorry for the background noise. I wanted to respond to what Kyle said about tourism, because he mentioned it twice in the context of retail density. And look, I agree with you that tourism needs to be taken into account when trying to figure out where to place a successful retail business left in the state, where there really is an oversaturation practically statewide with maybe pocket. But I've looked at the data, and I'd love to share the data with you, Kyle. I've looked at the data without tourism and with tourism. And without tourism factored in, Vermont is almost dead last in terms of retail density among states with adult use cannabis. We're ahead of Oregon, Alaska, and Montana, and behind everyone else. By the way, if you add 2 more stores, we're going to be behind Oregon.
Dave,
when you add in,
Dave, are those home rule states? Are they Dillon rule states? How much local control is there? There's a lot of factors here that we would love to consider. You know, we put out some numbers, you know, on retail density, because the legislation specifically said create some retail setting rules based on population density. So, you know, what are we supposed to do? Like, that's the legislative intent.
So I typically we don't get into arguments during open session. Happy to meet with you and talk to you. I will remind you, the statute also said market demand, not just population. But I will just to finish the point on tourism, that even when you add in tourism, we don't look much better. We go from 18th to 16th in retail density. And the point of this, okay, is not to argue over Dillon's rule or home rule or opt in or opt out. It's, you should be very concerned with an oversaturation of the retail market, as concerned as you are with overproduction on supply, because you want, I think, or at least you should want, a stable market where you don't have price collapses. Because when those happen, many things happen. One is that taxes are going to precipitously collapse as well. Also, you end up into a situation where you start seeing more problematic use. Talk to the medical society, see what their view is about having 400 or 500 retail stores in Vermont. I would bet that they would say they're more scared of it than even the industry is. And so I would love to share the data with you on both with and without tourism on retail density and show you guys that we are on the verge of doing what almost every other state has happened to every other state, which is about 3 or 4 years in, you see a collapse of the market. And that's going to be on your watch. So it's really up to you to do something about that.
Can you share that as part of like a public comment for the rules, Dave? That would be really helpful. The retail data that you have with and without tourism.
I will share that with you as part of the rulemaking process. I will share that with you outside of the rulemaking process.
Sure.
I'll be in
Let's
town
keep
next
it, Dave.
week.
Let's keep it to let's keep it in the rulemaking process, because then it's officially a part of the record. And I appreciate the information that you're providing. My only point was to contextualize that relying strictly on residents and counting the number of potential retail establishments moving forward doesn't tell the full picture. If you have an availability to tell the full picture, we would love to hear that. I think you know as well as we do that our ability to shut down retail completely from a legal perspective is shaky at best. Okay? And I know that's likely what you're trying to infer and insinuate with some of this conversation. And I get that. Okay? But we've got to figure out a way to move forward with the legislative, abilities that we do have. Look forward to reading your comments.
Yeah, and I look forward to trying to work with you guys again in a collaborative way to come to a point of market stability. And I hope that remains a priority for you
guys. Thanks for the comment, Dave. I can't see any of the names.
Yeah. Sorry. Next up is Bobby B. He had his hand up first. Yep.
Hello, thanks for the opportunity. Chair Pepper, I just wanted to say that I'm thrilled to hear you acknowledge the difficulty of operating a business in this overly regulated environment, particularly the sentiment that potency caps do more harm than good. With this line of thinking, I just figured I would again raise my dismay with this recent turn to eliminate multi-dose gummy edibles. I hope that you will keep these sentiments in mind as you consider alternative language or hopefully dropping this altogether. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bobby.
And then after Bobby, we have Josh.
Hey, am I coming through okay?
Yep.
Just want to say thanks to the board for the hard work, and thank you to James for acknowledging some of the realities the business is going through, some of the damages of the THC caps. Definitely know it's a hard job. We have sort of the unique perspective of being small local craft growers as well as retailers moving into that market. And that whole world just to stay viable and to continue to exist in this market. That was not in our plans in the beginning, but our experience, and I think a lot of the testimony today given by other retailers and people from the medical community underscores the importance of direct to consumer. The reality is things that aren't financially feasible for financial speculators and buyers and resellers are very feasible for farmers. And by not letting farmers engage in the selling of product, which is not a specialized role in any other industry, I think that it kind of goes without saying that there's a lot of personal interest tied up in these issues. And it's been our desire as a business from the beginning to make a fair living, not to get by and to get the highest quality medicine possible to people. We, like many here, also got into this by taking care of patients, helping people through really serious ailments. And while we generally support the medical endorsement, the intention behind it, making product more affordable for medical patients, what would make it the most affordable is allowing them to go directly to their farmer the same way you can with pretty much every other agricultural crop in Vermont. So just want to underscore that. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Anyone else with a public comment? And if you join by phone, it's *6 to unmute your phone, and anyone that's joined in the room since we started. Going once.
Oh, we have someone on the phone. Looks like.
Oh, sorry.
This is Sherman Hom. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. My name is Sherman Hom. I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs from Medicinal Genomics. And I've been in the cannabis testing field for over 13 years, and I'm a PhD molecular microbiologist. Would it be okay if I made some comments about your research study, which I support, that you just approved, or do you want me to just
sure, if you wouldn't mind emailing them, yeah, because it's I'm sure what you're going to send us is going to be highly technical, and it might be better just to have a hard copy of it that we can all talk about.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is that one?
Golden Dome.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for taking the comment. This is a quick one, an easy one. I just wanted to give a shout out and a thank you to Denise and Dwayne and Alex and all the compliance agents out there kind of sifting through the middle ground of what we're all discussing and kind of getting into the magic behind the scenes. So big shout out and thank you to those folks for doing their hard work.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for that. Last call for public comment. Okay. All right. Great. Well, I think it was Sean's point. Today is Cannabis Advocacy Day at the State House. We have a lot of people in the room that are participating in that. I can release you all from
Thanks for joining.
meeting, and thank you very much for making the time to come talk to us. And I will adjourn the meeting.